Hello everyone, this is Rocket Child and welcome. If you're interested in videos about cool art projects and tutorials, this is the place to be. So feel free to subscribe and check out my channel for more art videos. This week I published a short story that I wrote called The Giant's Heart, and I'm so proud of myself for finishing and releasing it to the world. This has been a dual project. To help promote the book, in addition to writing, I made an animated trailer that captures the essence of the story. Whenever I draw, I always challenge myself to get better. Animations take a lot of time to make, so if you compare my usual style of illustration to my animation style, you can see that I normally animate in a simpler style. For this project, I wanted to see if I could get better at details. This included the character designs, the backgrounds, the lighting, and the shadows, and the camera movements, and the general ambience. At the same time, I didn't want to spend a ridiculous amount of time on the animation and make it into a full film. I still wanted it to have balance and to work in harmony with the book. Without realizing it, I've been getting faster at drawing still illustrations. So when it came to the animation, that naturally got faster too. So I was pleasantly surprised. Anyway, this video shows the process of how I animated one of the cuts from the trailer. So let's go and get into it. So the synopsis goes, while hiking with her brothers, Jordan gets lost in the Australian bush, only to later discover that they were turned to stone by a giantess. Aided by Timberland, a boy kept prisoner by the giantess, the two search for the villainess's heart and the source of her power in order to revive her brothers. This Australian fantasy story is based on the Scandinavian fairy tale The Giant Who Had No Heart in Its Body, which was included in a collection called East of the Sun, West of the Moon, Tales of the North. I originally started this story based on a theme of reimagining fairy tales within the Australian context, and eventually it grew bigger than just the small challenge into a bigger story. In this scene, I wanted to show Jordan being scared and running through a valley surrounded by cliffs. Here I was experimenting with coloring in the background. I made it a bit softer using a blendier kind of brush to blend in the very bright orange colors with darker reds and some purple. As you can see in the crevices and the corners where there should be shadows, I'm using a darker, more intense shading to really show the contrast and separate the foreground elements from the background. At first I was intending this illustration to be a flat background, so all of the rocks are really connected as I'm drawing them. But later on, as I start thinking of ways to make the scene more dynamic and dramatic, I realized that it would be better to separate them into different layers so that I can add some motion and movement to them and make the scene feel more dynamic. The way I do that is after I finish all of this drawing you see here on the screen and I come to this conclusion, I then duplicate the layers and cut out individual elements, such as the two big rocks in the front are going to be cut out and called front rocks. The ones behind will be cut out and called middle rocks. The ones behind will be the back rocks, and towards the very end would be the very background, not that much detail, blurred underlayer. Once animated, I can then move these pieces back and forwards and create a parallaxing effect that has a little bit of motion, and you'll see that towards the end. After I finish drawing everything in, I want to add some ambience. The way that I'm doing it is by creating layers in between the rock layers and using a very soft brush or using the gradient tool. I'm adding a soft, low saturated purple glow. The idea is further away from your eye, the background gets a bit hazy because of the atmosphere, where closer towards your eye you have more contrast and you can see the colors clearly. These different layers add towards the atmosphere and make the background seem more dramatic. For the animation, I want to draw Jordan running towards the camera. To do this, I turned off the background layer that we just drew so that it wouldn't distract me, and then brought the original storyboard panel to be reference for my first pose. On the other side of the screen, I have some drawings that I did of Jordan before, and I'm just putting them there on the side so I can have reference of what her clothes look like, and eventually reference for the color that I can use the eyedrop color picker to copy the colors. To do the animation, I'm using Photoshop's timeline feature with probably 12 frames per second, either 12 or 24, the typical animation standard. And a run or a walk cycle is one of the basic techniques, so I have a general idea in my head how to draw it without needing to pull up a reference. When you run, I guess you use both feet, so to make the work easier for me, I just copied the exact same image, duplicated it, and changed the leg so that I wouldn't have to redraw the exact same pose over again. I'll be doing that throughout the entire process, where I will draw one leg in a certain pose and copy it over to the other side, so that way I would not have to redraw it completely again. As you can see here, it's a little bit confusing. There are 3 colors, red, blue, and green. The reality is I draw in black, but if you drew all the frames in black and you had them side by side for reference, you wouldn't really know which one you're working on at that moment, and it could lead to lots of mistakes. So what I like to do is change the colors. I use the Animating add-on. In that way, the lines are still black, but the way you see it on screen changes color. So I can have one frame be blue, one frame be red, one frame be green, and so I know that one color is the frame that happened before, one color is the frame that happened after, and the third color is the one that I'm drawing at that moment. I'm still using basic animation principles such as squash and stretch, so that when she lands on the floor, her body sinks deeply, and when she kicks off the ground, her body stretches up a little bit. It's still a complicated process because you can still get confused by which frame you're working on, and you have to double check and make sure you know the difference between the frame that happened before and the frame that happened after, so you don't make a mistake. I've been doing this for a long time, so I've just gotten used to being aware of what to look for, but that's also why I prefer to work with very simple designs when I'm animating, so it could be a smoother process that's less complicated and easy to read. I like to do straight ahead animation and then fill in the in-betweens. I'll constantly check back and forwards to see whether it looks good or not, or whether I need to add or take away bits. Because this is a run, it's going to be repeated. So once I am happy with the initial motion, then I can copy it and continue it so that she's running continuously. The idea is that Jordan starts at the back of the screen and then she runs towards the camera. I'm going to be doing that motion separately in After Effects, and so I don't have to worry about that extra detail right now. Once I'm happy with the animation, I can move on to coloring. Because it's a loop, I don't want to color in the exact same motion over and over again. So what I've done is I've left one frame in the red outline color so that when I duplicate it, I know to myself that I can also duplicate the colors because it's going to be in the same motion. Personally, I find coloring in to be a very tedious process, or at least in Photoshop it is. I like to give a pure white background to the entire image, and the reason is sometimes you can forget things, such as you may think the teeth are white so you leave it blank, but when you turn on the background it looks transparent. So what I like to do is color in the whole image in white, so at least I know that everything is covered in. Then I can make some new layers and color in every separate element. So the pants are one color, the shirt is one color, the shoes are one color, the skin's one color, the hair's one color. That's why I have the image on the right hand side, so it has similar colors for the clothes. I can use the eyedropper tool and select the color. Then I like to work through all of the frames to make sure that they all have the same tone. You don't want it having a different tone unnecessarily as it goes through the animation, otherwise it'll look like it's flashing. So you want it to have the same color. Because of this laborious process, I normally don't put shadows, but this time I wanted to try a new technique and I found that it works quite well. What I would do is I'd make a new layer on the timeline, so that's separate to just normal layers, it would be on the timeline. I would turn the whole thing into the multiply on the blending mode, and I would use a different color such as light purple, and on each frame I would draw using that light purple where I think the shadows would go, and because it's on the multiply layer it will change and look like a shadow. Another thing that I like to do in Photoshop is you have the option of changing the colors of the layers, as in the layer names. I like to change the colors to let me know what type of image it is. For example, I'll change the line art to be gray colored. I will change the color layers to be orange, and I would change the shadow layers to be purple or blue or something like that. That way I don't have to actually read names to know which layer is which. I can see from the colors to know which one they are. This is very important because the order of your layers can affect how it looks on the screen. So I would always want the shadow layer to be on top of the color so that it shows up. Finally, because I'm going to import this into After Effects, I created a bottom layer in a different color, and I'm going to use the green screen effect so that I can import the animation into After Effects and delete the background and add it to the other rock layers. For the background, I imported all of the separate layers, all the separate rock layers into After Effects into a new composition and turn them into 3D objects. Then I activated the 4 windows. What this means is, imagine seeing something straight from the front, something straight from above it, bird's eye view, and then straight from the side. Now, as you can see on the top left and the bottom right, it looks like a line. Really, it's kind of like if you had a piece of paper standing straight and you looked at the top would just be kind of like a line, or if you looked at the side of it, it'll be a line. But if you look at the front, it will have the drawing that you did. Then the top right window is what you're supposed to see as the final shot, the final camera shot. What I'm trying to do is set up all the different elements stacked in front of each other, so whatever is at the back is the furthest to the back, whatever is in the front is the furthest to the front. Sort of like if you had drawings of cardboard trees cut out and you had to put them on the table, having the ones closest to you staggered. It's the same principle, only this time it's digital on the computer. I've even included some of the foggy layers as well, so it looks as though there's fog in the distance and it adds to the general atmosphere. After adjusting all the images and their sizes to make sure that they look correct, I have an image that is everything flat, and I have that as my reference. So when I line up all of the different layers, I am trying to get it to be in the position that looks like the original reference. Once I'm happy with the placements, I create a camera layer. So what that is a digital camera. You put it into the stage and you have the ability to control the camera, to move the angle to side, to dolly in, pull out, and such, like a real camera. That way I can use the animation features to put in this digital camera and slowly move out and backtrack, and it will create the illusion of motion because you'll see the elements in the foreground either getting bigger or changing angle depending on the camera. I found this parallaxing technique to be really dynamic and really enhance the scene. I could have put the animation of Jordan running against a flat background and it would have looked okay, but just having this little bit of motion on the background really enhances and gives the scene more life. Once the background has been set up, I can then add in Jordan. The animation of her running will continue because that's the animation we did in Photoshop just now, but this time I will change her size. So I can start by putting her further towards the back and making her smaller so it looks like she's coming from the distance, and bringing her closer so that it looks like she's running straight through the landscape and towards us, the viewer. Once everything is complete, I can then save it and export it as a complete movie file and have it ready to add to the rest of the trailer. Thanks everyone for sticking around and watching this behind the scenes video on how I animated this run and also made the background. I think this video is too short to be called a tutorial since I do a lot of fine tuning and small movements that would be too long to explain. But now you can see how much work goes into the process, and seeing from the before storyboard and the after how it makes such a beautiful difference to really put in the extra details. I encourage you to watch the full trailer. I'll put the link up here in the card up here. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you later. Thanks everyone for your kindness and support. Please consider donating on my Buy Me a Coffee page, buymeacoffee.com/rocket1111child. The funds will go towards growing this channel and creating more art projects and videos. Anyway, thanks for watching.